So today we've welcomed our science and chemistry teacher. He is an expert at helping students connect concepts in science and chemistry. And today he's here to help us connect how SAT2 Science connects to many school courses that we take. Let's welcome Mr. Jerry Liu.
Okay, so how SAT subject tests relate to science school courses, because, well, since all of you are here and interested in applying to college, this is probably one of the things that most students, most parents want to ask. When do I take the SAT subject test? Okay, so first things first, as a review, what is the SAT subject test? Right? It's used for applications and it shows mastery in a subject. So most importantly, usually the question becomes, when do you want to take it? All right, so what's the best time? Okay, so let's take a look at what I have on this board right here, and I'm going to go into detail, right? When is the best time to take a subject test? After taking an AP class, that's usually the best time. Okay? That's just the honest one. After taking an honors class, that is usually the correct time, because usually the subject test only goes up to material that's in the honors section. When you take the AP course, it'll usually go into more detail than the subject test. Okay? After taking a regular class, you'll notice what I wrote up there. Usually not recommended, and there will be a good reason for that one. Okay. Okay. So here's the reason why. In a regular science course, you are usually just memorizing every single vocab word, thinking about what is correct, and you normally do not actually understand what is happening. Now, if you guys remember what I put earlier, the SAT subject test actually tests mastery. Right? So how do you differentiate between someone who actually knows the material versus someone who just memorized all the vocab words? You start testing concepts. All right. So in a regular course, the regular courses generally are not very hard. It doesn't teach students how to really think through the concepts. In fact, most regular teachers do not actually emphasize thinking. They won't even tell the students why this is the way it is. In an honors course, usually requires understanding because it's intended to give you a harder course to prepare you for college courses. Okay? And then the last one is the AP course. So an AP course, first and foremost, is supposed to be a college-level course. Okay? So one major important thing is every AP course that has an AP in front of its name must have the syllabus approved by the College Board, meaning someone actually checks what the teacher is teaching and make sure that it covers all the topics that are required for the college-level course. And then, well, that brings me to another point. With the honors and the regular course then, that is actually up to the teacher. So some teachers may teach all the material that is required that is required in my opinion for the SAT subject test. Some teachers do not. It really depends on the teacher themselves. Okay. So usually, why I say honors course is usually the correct time. Hopefully your teachers teach enough detail so that you can actually take the subject test, but that actually depends on the teachers. Okay. Okay. All right, here's my favorite question. My student received the A in this class over here. Can they take the SAT subject test? Okay, that's my honest answer. I honestly don't know. Okay. Now again, let me emphasize why. Just because you got an A in a class doesn't mean you understand the material. It just tells me that you were able to take your teacher's test and get a passing grade. What does that mean? Your student might have memorized everything the night before the exam, did well on the exam, and then forgot it all. Will they be able to take the subject test? Definitely not. Okay. And then what about a regular course, right? Well, in a regular course, they don't emphasize understanding, so they wouldn't be able to understand that either. Even in an AP course, even if the syllabus itself has been checked out by College Board and it fits the college level course, you still do not know if the teacher's tests are too easy or too hard. Right? Because let's be real honest, the grade you get in a class depends on usually homework and a couple of assignments and tests. If the teacher makes a test very, very easy, the students know they don't have to study very hard, they're not going to really understand the material. Right? It doesn't matter what level course it is, it depends on the teacher itself. Okay. And yeah, so this is, getting A means you passed your teacher's requirements, doesn't mean you actually understand it. Okay. So, here's an example question from chemistry. Okay. Which of the following would turn a solution acidic? Okay, so on the right side over there, I put up the definitions. These are the definitions we expect you to memorize in chemistry for, for an honors course and also for an AP course. Okay, now, a good student would recognize answer choice number 1 that does produce an acidic solution according to both the first two definitions. A wise student will recognize answer choice number 2 is actually an acid itself, so both of these are acids, right? Most students pick 1 and 2 only. Number 3 is also a correct answer. Okay, now why is that? Okay, so the explanation, CuSO4 turns into Cu2 plus and SO4 2 minus. Then the Cu2 plus reacts with water to form CuOH and H plus. Now, those of you who haven't taken chemistry before, right, this is not going to mean anything to you. But, like I said, most students who just go their way through and if the teachers never emphasize thinking are going to answer 1 and 2 only. Okay? Then what happens? They would miss out on the fact that number 3 also fits this question. Number 3 is also a correct answer. Okay? And this is the type of question that shows up on the subject test. They love to do this kind of thing, where they ask you how many of these actually fit. Okay? So, one of the key points here, if you just memorize your way through and you know the definitions are up there, you would only get 1 and 2. You would not get number 3. Because number 3 requires you to understand, well, what's happening in the solution itself. Okay, now, this is a chemistry example, but most of the other ones are similar. So, chemistry subject test. Usually you need at least an honors class, but that depends on the school and the teacher. Okay. Now, why do I say that? Because having experience teaching students around here, it depends on how much detail your teachers go into. Okay. Unfortunately, this year, currently, the only schools that actually teach all the material required for the subject test for chemistry, in chemistry honors, is Lindbergh and King's Academy. Okay. And every other school, Monte Vista, given which teachers they have this year, they will miss out on at least 2 chapters at the end of the year that are on the subject test that they will not teach. Also, they do not teach some of the concepts fully. They only go over it very briefly, but do not go into enough detail. So even though your student might have seen that concept before in school, they will not understand it well enough to do the subject test. Okay? Cupertino High, same idea. Okay? Lindbergh's teachers, a lot of students complain because they teach very fast, but they teach all of the material required. Okay? Now, again, that also doesn't mean that the student is ready, because if the student does not understand the concepts, you would have just seen the vocab words before and actually have no idea what's happening on the subject test. Okay? So, what about after the AP course? An AP course is supposed to be a college level course, but it is also designed differently. Okay. Now, thankfully, the AP Science exams are now designed to force you to think, because about half the exam asks you, why does this occur? Even in the multiple choice, my favorite type of question on the AP Chemistry exam is, well, all 4 of these following statements are true. Which one best explains the data shown above? That will happen on the AP exam. So, what's happening here? A good AP teacher will force your students to think, because it is required in order to pass the AP Science exam. Okay, so usually, if you take an AP science course, especially AP Chemistry, you have the understanding to do the subject test, because the subject test does not go as deep as the AP course. But what's happened? The AP course is functioning off of a different standard. So you'll notice there are 2 topics that are missing: colligative properties and organic chemistry. If you take AP Chemistry, if you want to take the subject test for chemistry, right, then you would have to go and self-study these 2 properties these 2 topics afterwards in order for you to pass the exam, or in order for you to try to get to the full score. Okay. Otherwise, you would just have to give up these points if they show up on the exam. So again, one of the key points here is you need to figure out what it is that your teachers are teaching. And one point, how does your specific school teacher teach? Because sometimes they might call an honors course, but they don't teach everything. Sometimes they call an AP course and the teacher makes their exams too easy, and then your student still doesn't know how to reason out all the concepts. that doesn't help either. Then they wouldn't pass the AP exam or the subject test, even if they get an A in the class. Okay? Now, regular, generally not recommended because they don't go over enough material. They do not go over to the concepts. It's very, very hard. It's very, very hard for any regular student to try to pass the subject test. It can be done, but I have not met many students who are able to do that. Okay? Now, my expertise is chemistry, but I also know a little bit about math. When do you take the math subject test? Usually after pre-calculus or a math level course. Now again, this depends on your school. So, why should you not take it after Algebra 2? Usually, now I say usually because this depends on, again, how your teachers teach it at school. Usually Algebra 2 is missing concepts called vectors, matrices, functions, polar coordinates, and limits. All of those have the possibility to show up on the math subject test. Okay. Next. So, however, what's going to happen here? Well, in the school districts around here, Homestead and Cupertino high schools, you should take the subject test after the first semester of pre-calculus. Why is that? Because at Homestead and Cupertino High, right now, their pre-calculus is designed where the first semester is actually pre-calculus and the second semester is calculus A. So once you get to calculus A, that has nothing to do with the subject test anymore. Which means, well, you may as well take it after the first semester. Now, what if you go to Monte Vista or Lindbergh? Their pre-calculus class is designed so that after the entire year of pre-calculus, you've learned all of pre-calculus. They do not do calculus A until the very end, and it's usually optional. So again, figure out which school you go to, figure out how your teachers are going to teach because the timing is now different. So, what about math analysis? A lot of your schools have a math analysis or maybe a version of pre-calculus that is not an honors level course, right? It usually teaches the same materials as math, as pre-calculus, but doesn't go into as much detail, okay? So you're usually missing vectors, polar coordinates, and matrices. So a couple of topics are not taught in math analysis, okay? So again, one of the key points, please figure out how your student's teacher teaches. Because if they, well, and specifically for math, try to figure out how they arrange their courses because different schools have different methods. Okay, yes. Okay, so biology. Okay, usually the regular course does not have enough detail. Then here's the reason why. Usually students take biology in freshman year, so 9th grade, when they first go in, right? And the biology teachers there are trying not to overload the students with a lot of homework, so they usually make it a little easier than, all the other courses. So first things first, it's going to be a little easier compared to most other science regular courses. The second thing, the subject test itself requires more material than the biology regular course actually has. So there are more topics on the subject test than the biology normally covers. The second part, 9th grade biology, you can memorize the vocab words and you can get A in class and you usually pass the class. No one ever looks back and thinks, what do I need to reason out? Subject test for biology, they love to give you sample experiments or sample data or sample situations and asks you to think about, well, what happens in this situation? What would you expect? A normal biology course, especially in the freshman year, is usually not going to have their students do that. So, usually not recommended. You would need to self-study quite a bit more material just in order to pass the subject exam. Okay. Yes. So, AP. Thankfully, the AP biology course has to fulfill a college level course. So it will cover more than enough detail for the subject test. Okay. Now again, this is if your student has a good teacher for AP biology and makes them go through all of the material and all of the concepts, because otherwise they would not necessarily do well on the subject test. All right, so summary. Subject tests require understanding. Right? Do not memorize and go in. You can memorize and go in, you will get an okay score. Not excellent, only okay. To get a good score, you will have to understand it. Okay. And then the most important point for today, different schools and different teachers have different standards. The only one that is normally standardized is the AP course itself, because College Board must check the syllabus of an AP level course before they are allowed to put AP in the name. Okay, so that one is at least, the syllabus is guaranteed. So you will cover all the topics. But again, it also depends on whether or not your teachers make the classes hard enough so that you will actually pass the exam. Honors in regular courses, that's up to the teacher. And some teachers realize, oh, I don't have enough time to teach every single topic, so let me go into detail for a bunch of topics. We will miss out on a few. Right? Some teachers do not teach in much detail, but teach a little too slowly, then they miss out on a few topics. Some teachers, like Lynbrook High School's teachers, they teach every single topic that is covered in the textbook, which is enough for the subject test. But that also means they don't really spend much time on each topic because they don't have the time to do so. So it's also a little harder for them to take the subject test. But usually Lynbrook students, as long as they survive their course, are pretty good at taking the exam. Okay. And then King's Academy, in my opinion, has one of the best chemistry teachers in this area. He will make your student understand everything, but it is also, in my opinion, the hardest chemistry course in this area. Because if you do not pay attention, you fall behind, you will fail the class. Okay. Many students come to me in second semester from King's Academy and say, hey, can you help me with this? And I say, well, do you understand all these previous topics beforehand? No, I'm sorry, there's no way to pull the grid. Like, I just have to tell you that. There will be no way. And at that point, don't even think about taking the subject test because you're already lacking too many things. So it depends on your teacher, and it also depends, again, on the school standards, right? And again, the difference between regulars, honors, and AP level courses. Regular courses are meant to just give you a course to pass the high school, so they don't really emphasize much thinking. They just want you to know a little bit about the subject, go through most of the topics, and have you memorize the vocab words. Honors is supposed to have you reason out the concepts, but again, that depends on your teachers. And then the AP course, guaranteed to be a college level syllabus. It depends on how the teachers run it. Okay. And yeah, that is basically what I have for today.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Liu?
Any short answer question, Bill?
Could you talk about physics? Because you talk about the difference between different high schools like biology and chemistry, but like physics.
Yeah, so I'm not very familiar with physics because I don't do physics myself. That's why it's not on my
Okay.
So from my understanding, the subject test for physics is hard because it requires a lot of math and it also requires you to understand concepts. So I would suspect physics regular probably not good enough. Then some of your schools may still have physics honors or AP Physics 1. That may be good enough because AP Physics 1 is usually the honors physics course, maybe, but you would have to check for that because I'm not familiar with the topic. So
How about Monroe Vista? Do you know anything about it?
I mean, I know the AP Physics 1 is now is this old physics honors course, but they're now using the AP level book, so it's an AP level book. But again, AP Physics 1 is supposed to be algebra based, so it's generally a little easier than Physics C, which is calculus. Okay. And for the subject test, usually it's usually an algebra based. It's probably high school level, so Physics 1 is usually good enough. But you should go online, check out the topic list, and see if it matches.
Second question, please. Subject test, math 2 subject test, and what kind of full scores, what kind of percentage of students taking that with the full scores? I know about 70% with the 800 for math 1 level. About math 2.
So this I don't actually know. I don't actually teach math.
Okay.
I just know of this over here because so many students talk about math that I've generally seen the fact that you have this many missing materials. So I don't actually teach math.
Yeah, can you clarify you mentioned the Homestead, Cupertino High, the math, the calculus. What is the recommendation time frame for the student to take a subject, math subject 2?
So at Cupertino High, their pre-calculus is currently set up, so the first semester is actually pre-calculus, and the second semester goes into calculus. So the subject test level 2 for math usually goes up to pre-calculus level material, so in Cupertino High, you want to take it after first semester.
Okay, thanks.
I have a quick question. In the old days, when I was a student, there were no SAT 2 tests. There was an achievement test. Is this SAT test equivalent
I
to
believe it's the
achievement
same
test?
thing. Yeah. It's changed names over the years. It used to be called SAT 2, now it's called subject test. It's probably the old names for achievement test.
What is considered a good score for SAT 2?
So that one is probably a better question to Dr. Yoshida. She has much more experience than I do. But generally, I'd say anything above a 700 is considered to be good, or at least decent. Yes, you might. Wait.
Can you comment on Saratoga High regarding the pre-calculus, what's the large stage?
So I don't know anything about Saratoga pre-calculus. You may want to ask Mr. Peter Chang. He's our math teacher. You may have more experience.
Yeah, how about the chemistry courses at Dunn High?
At Dunn High, so I actually don't know about Dunn High either. I haven't had any students from there, but I would assume it's probably Chem Honors, maybe Chem. Any other questions?
Mr. Liu? So Mr. Liu teaches our ACT Science and Math and our AP Chemistry and Chemistry Honors here at Sherville. If you're interested in the class, please check out the schedule. Okay, so a lot of people have asked about math, right? And when it comes to STEM math, math is considered one of the more difficult subjects. But our teacher, our head math teacher, Mr. Peter Chang, who has helped hundreds of students gain perfect scores in SATs, anything math related, has something to say about that. And he's here to talk about how we can make math easy if we know how to read it. So let's welcome Mr. Peter Chang.
I don't need this. Okay, if you send me a student that have hard time with mathematics, there are only two reasons. One, the student does not read textbook. Two, doesn't know how to read textbook. Okay? Now, other than that, you should be able to do it, right? So tonight, all the parents sitting here, I'd like you to go home and watch, observe how your students do homework. I would say probably 90% of chance your students do homework before even review the example. Okay, and that